Go ahead.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to call the Rules Committee meeting to order. If we could have a roll call, please.
Freeman.
Here.
Fusco.
Aye.
Amobian. Connor.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
All committee members are present except for Amobian.
All right, and then I'd look for a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, very good. So we have two resolutions today. The first is a resolution amending resolution number 1-2020 to amend and/or supplement the rules of procedure for Akron City Council and declaring an emergency. And will that be Mr. Fusco or Miss Somerville?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll go ahead and take it.
Okay.
This resolution addresses the charter changes that were on the ballot last November that Akron residents voted on as it relates to Akron Council, regarding the number of council members that it takes to hold a special meeting. Also better using technology. So now that our charter change passed, our clerk does not have to drive around the city and hand deliver notices regarding our special meetings. So we're trying to be more efficient. Also, this piece does deal with better using technology again, so that we can advertise and keep the public informed of issues on one central location, which is the City of Akron's website. I know that Ellen is also online if she has anything more to add, or if any council members have any other questions.
Very good. Ellen?
I think President Somerville did a great job, but I'm happy to help and answer any detailed questions if there's any questions about the specific updates.
Okay, very good. Do we have any questions or comments we'll begin with committee members? Other council members that are with us? Okay. What would be the pleasure? Would we want to vote this up this evening, or vote this down this evening? Or I don't think we have a choice to vote it down, but what would be your pleasure?
I would submit just to go ahead and I'd make a favorable recommendation with suspension of the rules, just for clarity and just get it going, just to get started on this, so that we can not have to wait 2 or 3 weeks, but just 1 week.
Okay, very good. So there's a motion for suspension of the rules.
Second.
And to have a second, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, very good. We'll see that that's passed out this evening. Our next resolution is a resolution recognizing Brant T. Lee for his efforts to educate individuals locally and nationwide about institutional racism and the law, and declaring an emergency. And I believe our sponsor is Mr. Neal.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution speaks to a rather unique effort that the University of Akron took back beginning of the fall, with all the discussion and all that was taking place because of George Floyd and the other incidents that were happening. Professor Brant Lee took a unique position and worked to educate folks. He held a class called Race, Equality, and the Law. When he put this course together, he thought he might get 50, 100 people, but he ended up getting 5,000 people to register for the course with a waiting list of 1,500. I was fortunate enough to be one of the students. Yes, I was in law school over the summer to take his class. Look out, Councilman Malik. And it was just it was a beautiful thing to be able to participate in. I will say I was challenged because the class also took place when we were having some of our committee meetings. But I believe Professor Lee touched on two things. One, in relation to, and I want to get this quote right, in relation to one of his colleagues at the University of Akron, a Professor Hickson. he stated that the challenge that we face is a misunderstanding of history. Ignorance is one of the things that threaten us the most, of not being aware of this country's history and the after effects of that. And so I really appreciate the class and the approach that Mr. Lee took. I know looking at the comments, many people were asking if he was going to do this again. And I think in a time when the paradigm is shifting for traditional education, traditional everything, that he really captured something. I mean, if you could imagine from a cost standpoint, 5,000 students. Now the challenge is how do you grade all those things? But he was able to elevate the consciousness of 5,000 different individuals. And I'm sure the university is looking at how to monetize that. But this resolution is just to speak to him, the work that he does. We know the work that he does with the city. I've reached out to his lovely wife. Hopefully this evening they'll be on the call so that council as a whole, we can express our appreciation. But I don't know if everyone's had a chance to read the resolution. That is the premise for bringing in the resolution. Here's one who's not just a and a professor, but he's a citizen of our city, looked at how he could use his gifts, his talents to bring about a level of understanding to all that we're going through at this point in time.
Thank you, Councilman Neal. Any other comments that we might have from committee members or council members?
Mr. Chair, I can see that Councilman Malik has his hand raised.
Mr. Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Neal. I just wanted to, express my, agreement and appreciation with this piece. I know many of us around this virtual horseshoe have benefited from Professor Lee's insights. I think our community has benefited from Professor Lee's insights, and including his work with the Akron Civil Rights Commission, and also the PLUS program, which has helped minority college students who are pursuing law school. And I've had the chance to participate in some of those sessions, and it's really incredible when you see students who are really advanced in their pursuits, and how Professor Lee really helps nurture that within those students. So I just wanted to say that, and also want to say, be careful, Councilman Neal, because people don't necessarily trust lawyers. So be careful what you wish for. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, and for the record, let it be known that Councilwoman Amobian is with us. Any other comments? Yes.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Connor.
I would like to say, also being one of those 5,000 students, I got to know Professor Lee through work with the Civil Rights Commission. And every time I see him, he manages to impress me with not only his great knowledge, but his willingness to share it, and share it in a very calm, explanatory way that helps everyone understand and come a long way. I always find his thoughts refreshing, and they always make me ponder and hopefully move us all forward.
Thank you, Councilwoman. All right, am I missing anyone? If not, would someone like to make a motion?
Motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Very good. We'll see that that is passed this evening. And with that, I do not believe, Sarah, we have anything else on our agenda.
No, this is the final for the Rules Committee.
All right, we will call the Rules Committee closed at 2:57. Thank you.
Our next committee is the Public Utilities and Green Committee. Those committee members are Swirsky, Freeman, Connor, Samples, and McKittrick. All committee members are present except for Swirsky. So Councilman Freeman, you will be chairing this meeting, and we can get started whenever you're ready.
All right, then we'll call the Public Utilities and Green Committee meeting to order, and still missing Mr. Swirsky. But we have a few items before us. But first, I need to ask if someone would make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
So
So
moved.
move.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Very good. Our first resolution is a resolution calling for a moratorium on City of Akron water service disconnections through March 1st, 2021 for all customers eligible for disconnection due to non-payment, calling for the remaining Akron Cares funding to be applied to delinquent accounts and declaring an emergency. And I believe the sponsor on this is Mr. Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this resolution is to address an issue that we discussed a few times briefly at the end of last year to have a more fuller discussion about it, which is how to deal with access to our city water system during this pandemic. And I just want to say at the outset that, you know, I want to be clear that I really appreciate the work, and I know we all do, that's been done by our city administration, whether it's the water department, the service department, the finance department, or the mayor's office on this issue. But sort of to give a little bit of background, I know I mentioned this in previous meetings, but from mid-March to mid-July, the state of Ohio had a moratorium on water disconnections. I think recognizing that it's important that we ensure that folks have access to water during the pandemic when hand washing and sanitation is so important. And also recognizing the economic impacts that this pandemic has had on many people who are forced to struggle to pay their bills and to, I think, often choose between what they're paying and what they're not paying. You know, folks are eligible for disconnections, if I'm right, under when they have a bill in excess of $105 and when they've been behind for 60 days. The city extended the moratorium through the end of July and then restarted disconnections in August. And since between August and the end of November, we had roughly 2,300 accounts that were disconnected. The exact number of households is a little unclear just because some of those could have been disconnected twice during that time. And in most cases, they are reconnected. But part of the issue is, you know, are folks, you know, taking money from over here to pay over here? And are they without water for some period of time? So, you know, this, again, it's hard to know exactly how many folks are impacted, but this represents, you know, likely thousands of people who have at some point been cut off from water during this COVID crisis. And particularly, you know, we're seeing now rates much higher for COVID, especially in November and December. Thankfully, they're a little lower now, but still much higher than they were in the spring and summer when we had a moratorium from the state. The administration has worked very hard to establish the Akron Cares program. Over $700,000 was made available, which provided grants of $175 to folks who had some indication that they were either below the poverty level or otherwise impacted by COVID-19. Those amounts have been raised to $500. And also Summit County money, about $700,000 in Summit County money has been applied to water bills as well. At the same time, I believe what we're seeing is that program availability does not necessarily equal program accessibility. In early October, there was about $369,000 left in the Akron Cares program, according to the Beacon Journal. And in early December, there was around $314,000 left in that fund, despite the fact that, you know, folks were being disconnected in between those periods of time. And so, you know, we still have, I believe, I don't have the latest numbers, but around $300,000 left, and we're adding $250,000 as well of new federal CARES Act money. And so, you know, in my mind, there should be some way, at least I know their federal and state money has restraints on how it's used, but at least with the private money that initially capitalized that grant fund, of trying to apply that money to accounts that are delinquent. Certainly the delinquency is much higher than the balance in that account, but at least it's a start to prevent us from having to disconnect folks. So I don't want to drone on too long, but the simple fact of the matter is that I really think, you know, we should start from the position of how do we make sure as few people have their water cut off during the next few months, as we continue to deal with this pandemic, as we continue to urge folks to be sanitary, as we see the light at the end of the tunnel from the vaccines. Certainly, I'm sure we'll hear more, and I certainly respect the administration's point that they've shared that moratoriums can result in a broader issue once a broader subset of ratepayers will start not paying, and then you'll have a broader issue at the end of the moratorium. But respectfully, we had a moratorium for almost 5 months. That didn't topple our water system. We have hundreds of thousands of dollars that are currently earmarked for relief. I believe we can find a way to get through these next 2 or 3 months without further disconnections. I've done some preliminary research, and I believe that Columbus is not doing disconnections right now. They're not sure when they will restart that. I believe Cincinnati is not doing disconnections through at least May. The city of Dayton is doing disconnections. Cleveland started doing their disconnections on December 1st, which is part of what prompted me to look into this. And I know that we have a long-term issue, right? We have a long-term affordability issue that folks on this call know far better than I do. But I don't think that we have to accept disconnections during pandemic as a price of that. I think that a moratorium through March 1, this is a resolution, right? We can't do this, but we can ask the administration that this be done. I think a moratorium through March 1st would help us get through this time. I've spoken with a number of folks on council who have opinions, who have creative ideas, who have thoughts. I think we all are going to work through this together. I know there's a couple of different pieces of legislation on this, so I'll be quiet and would love to hear other folks' thoughts.
Thank you, Councilman Malik. Let's open up now to committee members and other council members who ask it. Committee members, please go first with any questions or comments you might have, and then we'll open it up to all other council members. I would also encourage, I know we have several folks from the administration. If you have questions for them, this would be a great time to do that as well.
Mr. Chair, I can see that Councilwoman Samples has her hand raised.
Yes, Ms. Samples.
Thank you, Chairman. Councilman Malik, I have a couple questions. When you put this information together, do you have the number of how many people's water in the city of Akron is actually shut off to date? Do you have that information?
I can, that may be more proper for Ms. Goodrich or someone in the finance department, but I believe the number of shutoffs from August through November was 2,311 accounts. I don't have the number on how many households that was, or whether there were any in December. I know that we typically don't do disconnections over the holidays, so I believe that number in December would have been very low. But again, I'll defer to administration on that.
So if the administration could answer that question, and also if you could get us the information on not only how many residents in the city's water is shut off, how their zip codes, what zip codes are they coming from? I think that would be something that we should be looking at as well. This is a lot. You've definitely done your homework. I'm hoping that maybe you can wait a week or two. If we could do that, just so we could decipher a lot of your numbers. I would like to confirm those with the administration before we vote on something like this, especially with us having another piece coming up as well. I don't know if that's something you're willing to do, but if we could wait, I think that would be good. I mean, I'm all for trying to make sure we find a way to help our residents and not have water shut off, but I would definitely want them to confirm a lot of these numbers.
We can absolutely confirm those numbers. What I can say from our conversations with the utility is what we currently normally see is that we do shut off the water, and the water is turned on almost within a day or two of being shut off. So it's a tool that we use obviously in our tool belt, along with other tools within the utility to collect the revenue that's owed to us. But I believe at the beginning of December, we only had something like 60 some accounts that were in a state of shut off. And that was when we were still doing shut offs. I can pull the recent statistics and get those to council. But like I said, it's very common that we see that, you know, the turnoff is followed right away by the water being turned back on. So, and because there was no shutoffs over the last couple of weeks, I did not pull those statistics, but I can definitely reach out to the utility billing office and see who is in a state of shutoff. But I would suspect that it's going to be a relatively low number because we have not been doing turnoffs in December.
Okay, so you're saying that you haven't shut anything off since when? When did you guys stop shutting water off? Is that a collective decision that you made? Or I'm trying to understand if that, when did that start?
Correct. We normally don't shut people off throughout the holidays. So I believe the second week of December was the last time we shut anyone off. And we're going to detail our plan for you guys in regards to the additional funding. We're also going to do an extensive marketing campaign once we resume shutting off customers. So we will go ahead and detail that for you when the administration, when President Somerville and Vice President Fusco detail their resolution.
Okay, thank you, Shelley.
Mm-hmm.
And Shelley, I assume from the PR campaign, Councilman Malik had mentioned, you know, accessibility. And I'm assuming that that's part of the PR campaign, is letting folks know, hey, there's money out there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, targeted robocalls, text messaging, a door hanger that will be put on the home, you know, a couple days prior to the anticipated turnoff. Currently, we do a robocall in advance of turning off. Additionally, when they get the delinquent notice, the watermark funding is available at www.akronohio.gov/Akron Cares is on there. So we are really looking at a holistic approach to driving these customers to this available funding and making sure that they know that we are here to help them and help them, you know, keep their water on, or if it's been disconnected, to get it turned back on.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments or questions, please?
Do you don't see any other committee members raised? Sorry, I was muted. I don't see, I do see, let's see. I have some hands raised, but nobody on the committee that I can see. Are you ready to move on to other council members?
Sure, absolutely. I think I saw Mr. Fusco's hand, and then Mr. Lombardo, I think I saw your hand. We'll get to you right after Mr. Fusco. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a topic, it's time has come. My question though is that we do understand other cities out there, they are moratoriums as part of their what they're putting out there during this COVID time of COVID. What has anyone done any research in terms of what their experiences have been? I understand Cleveland, Columbus, etc. What has their experience been? Anybody from the administration have any idea on that?
Yeah, so when I actually reached out to the head of the utility in the city of Columbus. Columbus earmarked $2.5 million in CARES Act funding from the federal government for utility assistance. My first question was, hey, how are you doing this? And that's when they pointed me to something that had recently come out from the state auditor's office that stated we could do reimbursement grants with federal CARES Act dollars, which we're going to go over for you in a little bit. But also they expressed that they earmarked $2.5 million to help their residents, and they were struggling to give it away because they are not under, they're under a moratorium. They went through an extensive PR campaign. They said they went out to retail locations. They've robocalled. They sent things in the mail. They have tried and tried to get people, especially their delinquent accounts that are over 180 days delinquent, to apply for this funding. And what they expressed to us was because they're not, a certain segment of their population is not in danger of being turned off right now. It's kind of, you know, they're not applying and availing themselves to the funding. Up until last week, we thought that funding had to be used by the end of December 2020. We've now gotten CARES Act funding extension so that we have until the end of December 2021 to spend the federal CARES Act dollars, which is why we're bringing, hopefully that we can infuse Akron Cares with additional funding. But so yes, we reached out to the other utilities, wanted to understand. I've talked to Dayton as well, wanted to understand if they were doing a holiday moratorium, what they were planning on doing, which they did no such thing. But wanted to understand what the experience was. And what we determined was that, you know, a moratorium has decreased people availing themselves to the funding.
Thank you.
Mr. Lombardo, I think your hand was up next.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Really, Councilman Malik, you made some good points with, you know, the availability of funds doesn't necessarily equal the accessibility of funds. So I guess, you know, and my comments really may have already been said by Ms. Goodrich there, but I just wanted to know with the 2,300 that were disconnected, were those people, did they apply for these federal CARES Act funds? Or are they just letting, you know, the things slide? Maybe their bills are mounting and then they're going to have a bigger problem when we do, you know, resume collections. So, but I think, you know, again, Ms. Goodrich has said with the campaign going on, people should know that there's help out there and that they could, you know, possibly capitalize on this federal CARES Act money. I'm just not in favor of, you know, draining the CARES fund now for this when there's going to be help for them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions, comments, responses? I'm actually looking visually to see if I have it, if anybody's hand is raised.
You can see that Councilman Malik has his hand raised.
Okay, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, just wanted to respond to the couple things that were brought up in terms of Councilwoman Sample's point. Absolutely happy to take a week. I don't think that, you know, it's appropriate to ask folks to vote on something like this immediately. It's a complex issue, and there are lots of different ways of approaching it. So that's certainly fine with me. In terms of, the point that turnoffs are, you know, relatively short periods of time, I think that is an important thing to note, but I do think it's also important to think about, well, what is going through that person's head when they are making that decision, right? Are they, you know, if we're forcing their hand to get them to turn this on, are they foregoing something else that they really needed to spend that money on too? And then the other point was, you know, with regard to the other jurisdictions, you know, if Columbus is struggling to give this money away, partially because there's a moratorium, I totally agree that a moratorium may cause folks to pay less. But at the same time, we are also struggling to give this money away, right? We've had this money allocated since the summer, and we still have a substantial amount of it that remains in our accounts. And so I absolutely think that we need to do, you know, more public engagement. I think the amount of public engagement has been a lot, but I think we all can spread the word more. But at the same time, if that isn't going to, if people are going to continue to slip through, you know, how many folks are we going to disconnect in January? How many are we going to disconnect in February? And, you know, again, I'm not saying that we need free water. I'm not saying that we need a moratorium forever. I really think that this is because of COVID. You know, how do we get through as few folks disconnected as possible through the next couple months while we're dealing with this pandemic, while still, being mindful of the very real financial challenges that we have. So that's all, just what I wanted to address.
Thank you. Mr. Neal, you jumped to the other side of my screen here.
I think Ms. Nish wanted to answer something to Mr. Malik's point, so.
Okay, thank you. I'll just ask, I don't know, Shelley, have we seen any instance of during the moratorium of somebody maybe had a $300 water bill, and now because of moratorium, when we come back, they have a $600 water bill? Has anything like that happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's very common that when we do a moratorium, that our customer base views that as I do not have to pay my bill. So what we've traditionally seen is when we do a holiday moratorium, for example, our January bills will spike. They will compound because, people then view the moratorium as I do not have to pay the bill this month. And we see then people get into a cycle of delinquency that it takes them months to get out of. And to Councilman Malik's point, Columbus has struggled to give away this money because they're not using the tool of disconnection or disconnection. And so it is an important tool to have in our toolbox. We are also running a utility that is a business and needs revenue to sustain the utility. It's an enterprise fund. It's its own fund, its own financial being. And so we need that tool in our toolbox to be able to point people towards these funds. We now are infusing it with CARES Act dollars, and to continue to provide people assistance and help them before it gets to the point of disconnection. But some people unfortunately will not avail themselves to assistance or help until they're at that point. So.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Yeah, and for that, I guess from my perspective is that's where a moratorium could hurt someone if they would, as you said, say, "Oh, it's not a bill I have to pay right now." But I don't know what's in the mind of folks. But do you know, Shelley or Ellen or anyone, any of the folks? Do we ever refer some of our folks to Financial Empowerment Center?
That's a part of our application process. So I actually have the numbers for you. Of all the applications we processed, we referred 955 people that applied for Akron Cares to Financial Empowerment. So that is a part of our strategy, is we want them, they can qualify for additional penalty waivers if they go to Financial Empowerment Counseling. That goes to the lift up strategies that I researched last year, that the National League of Cities wanted us, that they encourage cities to implement, so that we're taking a multi-factored approach. We're trying to help them budget and prioritize, what needs to be paid, in what order. And so, yes, 955 people that applied for Akron Cares were referred to the Financial Empowerment Counseling Center through our application process.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Nish?
Thanks. I just wanted to supplement just a little bit on what Ms. Goodrich has been saying. And I think really to summarize it, what we found from talking to other communities and our own experience is that moratoriums are bad, both for the utility and for the customer in the long term, because obviously the utility has the financial impacts, but also customers tend to get further behind on their bills than they would be without a moratorium. So what we're trying to do is prevent negative effects both for the Akron water system and for our customers. And that's focusing on an assistance-based approach. And in order to get people to avail themselves to the assistance, we have continually revamped that program. So some of the barriers that have existed in the past, we have taken those barriers away. So people couldn't prove their water bill was in their name. We've made that easier to do. We've increased the amount that's available. We've made it available several times so that people who've already availed themselves of Akron Cares now can get it again. So we've been constantly looking at what are the barriers, why are people not being able to use this assistance, and we have taken away every barrier we can find. And we're going to continue to do that. So if any of our council people on this call or other people hear from a resident about a concern about how they're not able to utilize the program, let us know and we'll be happy to work with them to get them the assistance that they need. You know, like we said, we're going to be delivering mailers now physically to people's residences before turnoff. If nothing else will get their attention, we're hoping that a physical mailer will, you know, post it on their door, will say, money's available, you know, give us a call, we will work with you to get you set up, you know, so that we don't have to disconnect your water. So that's just really, I wanted to add that.
Okay, thank you.
And
Mr.
we
Mobian, I
also
think- oh,
increased our payment plan. So we increased our payment plan flexibility. We've increased the amount of people that are on payment plans. So we have definitely, I just want to point to that, is that we have a tremendous amount of people that are on payment plans, more than we've ever had in the past. But that's all part of the utility trying to be flexible, you know, with our customers. So that is another option.
Okay, Mr. Neal, I'll come to you. I think Ms. Amobian had spoke. Linda, did you have something to ask?
Yeah.
Okay, please.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Hi, Linda, I'm going to interrupt for a moment. I don't know if it's just, I'm not getting anything you're saying.
My computer here. But anyway, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
It's clearer now.
Parts, not too much.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Not very well.
Can you hear me now?
Just getting pieces and parts. I'm sorry. I tell you what, let me go over to Mr. Neal and we'll see if we can come back to Ms. Amobian then. Mr. Neal?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm going to recognize Mr. Neal right now
It's my
because we're
equipment.
just getting
Okay.
just hardly anything of what you say.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me at all? I'm going to go
Okay,
outside.
that's better. You walked outside. That's better. Mr. Neal, I'll come back to you if that's okay.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Okay. Ms. Amobian?
Have to take
Mr.
yourself
Mobian, you're
off.
muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Go
Oh,
right
thank
ahead.
you so much. I'm sorry, my phone has been going in and out. I apologize for the delay, everyone. But basically, I have heard all of the supportive services that have been offered to people, and I really thank the administration for doing that. I still don't know why people don't take advantage of things that they need, and it could be because they are embarrassed or they don't want to do it because folks would know their business or whatever the case may be. But then there are those folks who just, I don't care what you do, still don't know the resources that are available to them. My problem is this pandemic that we're in is totally different from anything we've ever experienced before. And to ask somebody to hibernate in your home and not work and all that, and not have water to run, to wash your hands or to eat or whatever, is a different scenario. And it is not a perfect answer. I just cannot support continuing to turn folks' water, shut it off. It's not something that, and I thank Councilman Malik for bringing this to our attention, because totally I was aware of some of it, but not to the extent. And my support is to allow people to have water. We deal with the outcome, the fallout of this after this, hopefully pandemic or early, late spring or whatever. But the problem that we have, $250,000 sounds like a lot of money, but you're talking about giving $500 to I don't know how many people. I'm not sure how many folks are going to benefit. And I think earlier today I was talking about, we can get volunteers and other folks to knock on doors or to drop off for a hanger and let folks know this money is available. And I don't know why we just can't put it on their bill, but again, because it's money they won't have to pay back. This is essentially a grant that we're talking about adding to that bill. So anyway, those are my thoughts and those are my comments. But I'm just really concerned about continuing to shut off the water in people's homes. So that is my concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think coming to Mr. Neal next.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate what's been shared, but I think this is an opportunity to look at our practice, our collective practice of council and administration, the charitable organizations that are out there, and then also going back and looking at all the policy that's been brought in to address this water issue concern, that if voted up or voted down, and the majority of it has been voted down. This is an opportunity, if we were to issue a moratorium, not just to issue a blanket moratorium, to make sure that if you get the moratorium that you are enrolled in some type of financial support initiative. Now, council passed legislation for the LIFT program, but this is the first time we've gotten any real update on the program. And to Councilwoman Sample's point, I know Ms. Goodrich hasn't had a chance to answer my questions, but what wards are impacted the most? What wards are receiving those dollars? I want my colleagues to think of this. Our wards are larger than the city of Norton. They're larger than the city of Copley. They almost are just a little bit smaller than the city of Barberton. Our wards are. But yet we try to manage this from a macro perspective when we should be more intimate in how we deal with this. And by that, I mean, if we had to, folks mentioned Columbus, each one of the Columbus City Council members received $1 million in CARES dollars to minister to the constituents and how they saw fit. Each one of their council members received $1 million. So what would happen if we took a more micro approach and looked at this first, doing the analytical data to find out where are people that are applying for these dollars? Are some wards applying more than others? And then working out to where, I don't know about you, but I get calls from churches, from nonprofit organizations who minister in my community, to where each one of us knew intimately what was going on in our community. And I'll tell you what some of the churches that provide food banks in my community are doing. They're trying to communicate with one another to see if people are going from food bank to food bank to food bank, so that we can find out, is a person just mismanaging their money? Do they not make enough? Are they underemployed? But to just keep, because every year we, at the end of the year, as a feel good, we give money over to the CARES, but we don't know how it really impacts. And I think this is an opportunity for us to be, this is 2021. I'm a Browns fan, so if any of you, this term is going to make sense to you, to use analytical data to make sure that we really minister to the community in the right way. And when we have a carrot, like a grant that can help them pay for their things, that's an easy way to plug them in. I also think a piece of this puzzle that we never include is the landlord. 50% of our residents rent, over 50%. Where are they in this equation? Because ultimately, when you talk about a moratorium, if there's a breakdown in that cash flow, it falls on that landlord. And we've had members from the Akron Canton Real Estate Investment Association come to us and ask to work with us. So this is a beautiful opportunity for us to create synergy between what we do as a city, what our nonprofit organizations are doing, and what our home providers, landlords, are doing. Because if you remember, we've had residents come down and say, hey, look, I could get HEAP assistance for gas, for electric, but when it comes to water, the city won't let me get any assistance because I can't get the water bill in my name. This is an opportunity for us to look at our total process, because we keep ending up here every year. And there's a reason. And we need to find out what those reasons are. Some of them we may be out of our control. It may just be the hard cold fact that there isn't enough, when your median income is only $30-something thousand, And we know if that's the median income for the city, for some of our populations, our Black and brown populations, that median income is probably much less. There's just not enough money to make it to the end of the month. And so I'm saying we have to be more sophisticated and work more collaboratively in answering some of these questions. This is not a criticism. This is just a reality that, you know, we've got to really get a handle on what's taking place. But I want to put this back in perspective. Each one of my council members manage a ward that is larger than the city of Copley, larger than the city of Norton, almost the size of the city of Barberton. We cannot micromanage this. It doesn't work. We've got to do more macro manage this. We've got to do micromanagement, partnering with those churches and nonprofit organizations that minister to our community.
Thank you. Other comments looking around here? Yes, Ms. Samples.
Just briefly, one question for Shelley. She mentioned that part of one of the requirements for people was they have to go through the financial empowerment. I do hope that with the round of CARES Act, that was pre-COVID. Because of the situation we're in now, I'm hoping that's not going to be part of the application process, especially now when people have to shelter in place, especially with our elderly people who we don't want out in the world right now until they get vaccinated twice, not just the first one. So that concerns me a little if that's a part of the application, especially with our elders, because they are not computer savvy. They don't know the first thing, how to log on and do an application online. I just taught my mom how to get on Pandora on her phone. So I can't even imagine trying to help her or my try to maneuver this process on the internet. So I'm hoping that there's going to be a process in place for those who are not techie savvy.
Yes. So let me clarify that. The financial empowerment counseling, they can ask for a referral on the application. So it's not a requirement. And it's termed, you know, for them, it is, you know, worded so that it makes people want to do it because they can avail themselves to further penalty waivers if they go through financial empowerment coaching. But we've had over 3,000 applications and 955 of them have requested financial empowerment counseling. So, I mean, it is not a requirement. We also take a paper application that can be mailed in. We will mail it to you. So if you call into our call center, you're elderly and you need assistance, our CSR reps have been trained to troubleshoot and to provide as much assistance to people as they can to help them fill out the application. It's a relatively simple application. It can be done online if the person is tech savvy or on a smartphone, but it can also be done on paper because we do recognize, you know, not everyone is going to be able to do, you know, or have access to internet. So we will mail out the application. It's available on our website. So there is multiple ways for people to apply and qualify for the program.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Comments or questions? I don't want to miss anyone. Okay, we're kind of at the end of our discussion. Does anybody have a desire to make a motion on this, or?
I'll make a motion for time.
Okay, we have a motion for time. Looking for a second. I don't want to miss anyone. Looking for a second on the motion. Okay, we do not have a second on the motion for time. All right. Sarah, I'm not missing anyone, am I?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, is there another motion anywhere? Okay, given everything I've heard, my personal feeling is moratorium is not a good idea right now. I think that we've equipped ourselves for those cases that are going to come before us, but I have great concern about a moratorium maybe hurting some folks, and a bill piling up, and something just like I said earlier, a $300 bill 3 months from now is a $600 bill. So I am going to make a motion for a negative report, and if I have a second, we'll proceed.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion, a second. Now this is for a disfavorable report that we're voting on. All in favor? Aye. Okay, Brad, I can't hear you. Are you on?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, and all opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we need to do a roll call here.
Sure. Freeman,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Samples,
Nay.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Okay, the motion for the adverse report passes 3-1.
Okay. Okay, we'll report that out this evening. Okay, next item is an ordinance providing a monthly credit to residential sewer account holders and declaring an emergency. And let me see, the sponsor is Mr. Neal, I believe. Still
Yes,
with
sir.
us, Russ? There we go. Mr.
Yes.
Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if members of council have had a chance to read not just the resolution, but all of the support documentation. So with that, I'm here just to answer questions because I think it's pretty comprehensive. To be fair to the resolution and to be fair to members on council, members need to read it and then come back with any questions. If you see the resolution, it was originally written almost a year ago. I mean, not the resolution, the ordinance. It's brought in about a year ago. So obviously there's no rush on this, but the issue that the resolution addresses is real. One, it is directly connected to health disparities. We just passed an ordinance here saying that about the public health crisis. This issue addresses that. It tries to address one of the factors that could be a variable in infant mortality, as well as lupus. We don't talk about the high incidences of lupus and MS, multiple sclerosis, that resides in I'll say West Akron for sure. There's documentation there from our Congresswoman Marsha Fudge, and from the EPA. So again, I don't know if members on council have had a chance to read it. Again, there is no rush on my part because I've sat on it. Well, I haven't sat on it, but I wanted to make sure that the administration, as well as our chairman, had a chance to look at it. To date, I've gotten no, documented concerns. I know this is a matter that we have to look into to actually see if we can afford such a thing. But I want to say this, and this goes back to understanding when we initiate policy. When we set our sewer rate, that was already an inequitable policy because we set it based on median income, meaning that half of our residents couldn't afford it right off the rip. We knew that. Since we passed that legislation, I don't know how many years ago now, unfortunately, we as a council have not been able to even discuss that issue in a healthy manner. But the reality of it is, and we just talked about the moratorium, which I must say I'm disappointed. It's not a problem with the moratorium, it's how it's utilized. It's a tool that could be of a great asset. But be that as it may, the reality of it is that there is a financial hardship placed by our sewer bill rate. But this issue deals with best practice as stated by the EPA on how to utilize your water. You should never, when you wake up in the morning, you should never turn on your water, put your pot right under it and boil that water. If you read the documentation, it says best practice is that you let that water run for 2 to 3 minutes before you utilize it because of the lead and sediments that are in your pipes. You should do that anytime your water sits 8 to 12 hours, and definitely if you leave and you go away on vacation. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like for everyone to be able to read it so that we can have a discussion, because again, I'm not saying that this is the answer, but it is a direction, taking us in a direction to the answer. I can tell you what we've done thus far is not the answer.
All right. Questions or comments from committee members begin with? Around. Okay, we'll open it up to the rest of council. I noticed it. I think it says, Mr. Neal, you were looking at $160 a year. What has anybody figured out what that would be? Based on how many customers we have, what that would cost? Looking for an answer anywhere? Yes, Mr. Little.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk about our utility and our water. I mean, I could talk about the money, but this isn't really, I mean, it comes down about giving a credit, and to answer your question, it'd be $10 million. So based on our operations, how do we make that money up? But that's not about this. I want to talk about the perception of we have a lead problem in Akron, which we do not, okay? Since the EPA mandated testing back in 92, 30 years ago, 29 years ago, we have been way under the action level. The action level set forth by the EPA is 15 parts per billion. Now, we take samples throughout the city every year, and we've done it, and it was on a triannual basis. So every 3 years, you had to go back and test, and we were always under. Well, what happened to Flint, and a lot of the things that Councilman Neal is talking about best practices are for utilities like Flint. They're not utilities like Akron. If you look at best practices on our website, it's been our website for years, is you should run the water for a few seconds after it's been sitting, okay? What we do in our testing is we have 50 sites throughout the city. Every year we go in and we set it up residential, and we tell them do not use the water when you go to bed. We come in first thing in the morning so it does not disrupt them, and we take a first draw sample. In other words, we have that vial under the faucet, we crack it, and we take that first sample. And I'm going to tell you some numbers real quick. In 18, when we say 15 parts per billion, we were 2.3. In 19, we were 2.45. And last year, we were at 1.55, way under the action level. I mean, this is a blip on our whole operation. That's why we do flushing. That's why Mayor Horgan, when he came in, he made a priority. Let's get rid of those lead services. But this goes back to past administration. Some cities don't even know how many they have. We have 85,000 services. We have records back to 1965 where this program began. We now have 4,400. And I'm going to say about our utility, when I say how proud of what they've done, first of all, working through the pandemic every day, being there, keeping our employees safe, going out and keeping our customers safe, providing clean, fresh water. This year alone, we have went out, and I'll tell you what, Jeff Bernowski and his team, they leverage EPA dollars as best as anybody. We got a grant for $2 million. We're going to remove 400 to 500 lead services in 21. Okay. And like I said, that's been Mayor Horrigan's drive since he came in. We've done probably 160, 170 every year. And, you know, with that resurfacing program, it's been working with the other departments. We have to get those lead services, especially when there's 10 on the street before we resurface. Because the biggest thing our resident says, what are you guys doing? You just paved the street. Now you're breaking it open again. Okay. So earlier this month, or earlier last month in December, Jeff put on a webinar for American Water Works Association. Over 300 people participated. He's the one that talked about best practices in Ohio. Lead came up and what we're doing. And like I said, over 300 people got continuing education credits. And I could forward this webinar to anybody who would like to see it. But Jeff and his team, they've optimized our chemical program. They've reduced cost, on and on. And Councilman's Neil right, our sewer rates are outrageous, okay? But we have an EPA mandate. We have a consent decree we have to follow. So we haven't raised anything in water, but we've tried to leverage these things, and we've continually lowered and lowered our numbers when it comes to action levels. So, you know, the perception is we have a problem out there. We do not have a problem out there. We want to eradicate all lead in our system. I totally agree. And we're working forward and working towards that goal every day. Jeff is on here if you have any questions technically. I mean, he's going to tell you how much, you know, zinc orthophosphate and this chemical and that chemical and how he's leveraged all these things. He can speak to that, but I don't think we need to talk about that today. I think we need to talk about our water system and what this means. And, you know, when your first question is, what's it mean? $10 million? I don't know how we make that up. Okay. We have 6,500 customers that average 1 HCF or less. That means they only use 1 unit of water every month, 6,500. So are we going to give them a credit on their sewer bill? If this goes through, because we don't know if they're running the water or not, we're going to give them a credit when they don't even spend that much. Okay. Their sewer bill for 1 HCF is $10.66. He's talking about giving them a $13 credit. I don't know how that would even work. Okay. Talk about a nightmare for our finance department. So I will answer any questions. Jeff's here to answer any questions. But when we talk about best practices, like I said, it's been on our website to run that water for a few seconds. That's what we've always gone to, and it's proven with the results we get in our testing. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
Come to Mr. Neal now.
Okay. Mr. Luddle, the problem that we have is real, it's documented. We have high infant mortality. We have cases of lupus and MS, and we're searching for ways to address those. Again, I asked the colleagues to read the information that was sent out by Congresswoman Fudge and the EPA best practices. Yes, there's a cost factor, but that's why we bring legislation to the floor so that we could figure, we would prorate those things so that it could work. I mean, over the summer, I must have had at least 4 or 5 breaks in my ward alone. I don't know across the city. I'm talking about breaks that ran, some of them ran for over a month. Now, who paid for that water? To say that what we're talking about is if we can get people to utilize best practice, and you know what, to your point, Mr. Luddle, we may have to research it, but if it saves a life, what's that worth? Because the fee that we charge is kind of arbitrary. We had to set a rate, we set a rate. If the EPA says that this is best practice, okay, and until we test everybody's line inside their home, we don't know. So my proposal is that we do a focus on those areas that have the high infant mortality rates, that have the high incidences of MS and lupus, and run a test case study. This goes back to addressing several issues. I mean, if you remember, hey, if we can let people skip paying sewer and water so they can fill their pool, we should be able to, if we understand that we're telling people to run water, and it doesn't say for a few seconds, EPA says for a few minutes, to run it for a few minutes every day so that to make sure that there's no sediment in that water, we can calculate how to give them a credit. And to say that it's $10 million, again, those figures, yes, we have to pay a bill, but we're working, some of those numbers are arbitrary because like I said, when we have a break on the street, we don't rush to go fix that break. In my ward, water ran so much in one street that the street collapsed in because we let the water run and run and run and run and run. So yes, do we have a bill to play? Yes, we do. Do we have real health challenges? Yes, we do. And so this is an opportunity for us to take a mature look at how to address this. And one way is, and I never got the answers, I don't know how much money we giving a credit to for people to be able to water their lawn and to fill their pools. You know, if we did this, we would get rid of that. And to your point, a very good point, if someone doesn't use but so much water already, then we would adjust the credit that they would get. But understanding, you know, if we're going to ask people to utilize best practice for health reasons, this is the way that we need to go about it.
Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, Tamika Rose is asking to be recognized.
Okay.
Also, I just see that Councilman Malik has his hand raised.
Okay, very good. Ms. Rose?
Thank you, Chairman Freeman and members of the committee and council. I just wanted to address Councilman Neal's statements as to the amount of lead in the city of Akron's water is causing infant mortality. We have worked in full-term first birthday. That was one of the first issues that we addressed. And we have found out that that is not a significant factor in our infant mortality rate in Akron. I cannot speak to other cities across the nation, but I know in Akron that is not a factor. So I just wanted to let everyone know that our factors are mainly stress that is due to the structural racist activities that go on in our society. And in addition to that, unsafe sleep related deaths. But lead is not one of the issues that we have here to address in terms of infant mortality in Akron. We have gone through that ad nauseum with Summit County Health. So I just wanted to be clear with that.
Thank you. That's good information. Thank you very much, Ms. Rose. Coming to you, Mr. Malik.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask, I know that some of the attached documentation to this ordinance had discussed that the law department had concerns with this ordinance. Is there anyone who's available to speak to that? Or, you know, maybe we can, yeah, that's my question.
Let me, in response to Mr. Malik's question, I'll go to Ms. Nish, then Mr. Neal, I'll come back to you. Ellen?
Sure. So I see that I believe Rebecca Advent is also on the line. So I don't know, Rebecca, I didn't see you before, but if you wanted to speak. But yes, there are identified concerns about council's legal authority to pass an ordinance. So this is not a resolution before you. This is an actual ordinance that would implement a credit about council's authority to do so under the charter and the way that the city is structured, very much like council does not have the authority to actually issue a water moratorium because the city administration controls the collection of fees for water and sewer accounts. So Rebecca could probably expound on that, but that's the opinion of the law director.
Just continuing with that thought, Ms. Advent, if you'd like to add something.
I think that summarized it pretty well. The concerns are that the authority that's vested in the legislative authority is to establish rates and charges for the services. Here, it's kind of doing the inverse, and it's giving a credit. And we're of the opinion that it's outside the statutory authority because it goes into that administrative component.
Thank you. Yes, now Mr. Neal.
Thank you, sir. I would like to say, members of council, this legislation has been out since last February. I never got a call from the law department. Never got a call to talk and discuss about this legislation, a matter that's real. And to Ms. Rose's part, this doesn't just speak to lead. It talks about EPA's practice. Lead is one of them. But if you read the paper just a month ago, infant mortality went down for every class of people except for Black women. So we can't say what is or what isn't. We have to overturn every stone to look at this. And so this is just one matter. From my constituents in my ward, I get questions because we haven't done the research on MS and lupus and why it's so high. I wish we would take time to look at that. But again, in regards to this piece, the information is there. I'd like for people to take a look at it. I waited almost a year. I sent out emails asking for, what are your concerns? How can this be discussed? And council does have the authority to set the sewer rate because we vote on it. Now, if it comes before us about, and it was an inequitable policy because only those who could afford it could get it. For somebody who could afford a meter to be able to not have to pay a sewer rate, and they could use that water all summer, then surely we could take a mature look at this and see if there is value to extending this to help our residents.
Thank you. Comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, I can see that Councilman Fusco has his hand raised.
Yes, Mr. Fusco.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The just a couple things. The EPA, and I'm looking here, Mr. Neal. Oftentimes whenever the EPA they provide advisories, et cetera, so on and so forth, it's pretty much across the board, and not specifically for just one jurisdiction, unless it's so I'm looking for that in here, and I'm not able to find it. I'll talk to you afterwards. But typically the EPA, whenever things like that occur, and I think Akron is unique, and I'm to make a statement like a mature look at our utility or our water distribution, I take exception to, because the thing of it is, I think we have an award-winning utility. We have, we in terms of the lead piece of it, our capital budget over the last few years, Mr. Little is in the right. Yeah, we've upped our game, if you will, in terms of the lead abatement within the pipes for water distribution. But over and above that is back in the 70s and 80s, 90s, whenever Akron was smart in terms of whenever we had our community development block grant areas, we were replacing infrastructure. Okay. And there's well over 30 neighborhoods out there that the infrastructure was replaced. It didn't go just to housing, it was holistic. And so that's why I think we're in such a good position in terms of our water distribution within our neighborhoods. And whenever it comes to repairs, I know that we live in a climate where, breaks occur much often, more than we would like to see, obviously. And there is situations where our crews get behind and so on and so forth. But I do know whenever there are breaks occur, our utility and our teams and our employees go out there and they address them the best way they can. And I stand behind our employees and all the work that they do whenever they're given a challenge, such as, inclement weather, and they got to go out and they have to make repairs and shut the water off, so on and so forth. Absolutely, there's exceptions from time to time whenever there's problems, flooding, et cetera, so on and so forth occur, but in the freeze and thaw. But like I said, we have upped our game, and we are probably, in Ohio, if not the northeastern United States, one of the shining examples of how to address the lead in the water distribution systems. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Bronowski, since you're on with us, I just want to say I probably talked to more folks in water here the past week or so than I have in a while. And thank you for everything you're doing. And in my conversation with folks that are connected to you and also on the collection side of things, folks really admire your leadership and your commitment to good H2O in Akron. So thank you for that. That's kind of an aside from the piece of legislation, but just wanted to say that, Jeff.
No, thank you so much for the kind words that have been said here. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd had a chance, to talk to the folks that are even picking up the phones, and the appreciation goes all the way up. And I just, I was pretty impressed with, even with the care for the individual, as I talked with some of the folks that are taking those water calls every day. I know I'm chasing a rabbit now. I'm off base. So, any other questions, comments about this piece of legislation before us? Ms. Samples.
Just briefly, I just want to know, has anyone from the administration or even Councilman Neal, has anyone spoken with Congresswoman Fudge about this? This seems like something that they brought in back in April of last year. She had quite a few of her colleagues that signed on for this water affordability relief package. And I'm just wondering, did anyone reach out to Congresswoman Fudge to see how something like this could be utilized in the city, especially when if we're saying that Councilman Neal doesn't have the legal authority? Did anyone reach out to Congresswoman Fudge?
Mr. Neal?
I have not spoken with the councilwoman directly, but I have been in contact with her legislative aides for this area. On this and on several other matters.
And Councilman Freeman, this is Tamika Rose. I did speak with her staff, and we were, before COVID, working on how to help families to change the lead in their homes, because we understand that we've done everything that we can do here in the city of Akron, but if some of the lead pipes in their homes are a little bit older and they need to be replaced, that is where we needed to have the money be infused into our community. So that's what we were trying to do, but then COVID hit and we weren't able to move forward with that time.
Thank you. Yeah, and anybody that's listening, the last thing we want to come out of this conversation is, oh, Akron has a lead problem. We're real fortunate that we don't have a lead problem. And, there may be other issues, but don't anyone leave this conversation thinking that, Akron has a lead problem. And conversation, Mr. Neal?
Yes, sir. I just want to speak to Mrs. Rose's point. She hit on it. The city could do all its part leading up to the house, but if we don't know what's inside the guts of the house, the age of those pipes, a lot of our homes are reaching the century point. I think we have more homes reaching the century point that are over 70, 80 years old. That may be where a majority of our housing population is, especially if you're in certain areas of our community. That infrastructure use lead solder. And that is not the only contaminant. But so again, not asking for this to be passed today. This is something I think, and to your point, Mr. Fusco, not criticizing our anything that we're doing. This is just information that says, hey, these are best practices. This is what you have to look at. And to Ms. Rose's point, the city can do everything it wants to up to someone's home. But if the infrastructure within that home is not up to code, is faulty, then all our work is for naught.
Okay, looking around here, I don't think I see any other. So if we're at the end of our discussion, what are the wishes of the committee? Mr. McKittrick?
After listening to Mr. Luddle and listening to the law department here, I'd like to make a motion for an adverse report.
For an adverse report?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Okay, there's a motion for an adverse report. I'm looking to see if there's a second. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and second that then. And now we need to take a vote.
Question?
Mr. Neal, did you have another comment?
Yes, sir. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask a question since I'm not on the committee. I guess my concern is I would ask, have the members had a chance to read the legislation and the supporting documentation?
Yeah, Mr. McKittrick's indicating. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. If you're going to vote, you need to have your mic on. Okay.
Aye.
Aye. And all opposed?
Nay.
Okay, roll call.
Oh, sure. Freeman,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Samples,
Nay.
McKittrick.
Aye.
The motion for an adverse report passes 3-1.
Okay, we will pass that out this evening. And next we come to our last piece. And this is a resolution expressing support for the city's recent allocation of $250,000 of federal CARES Act dollars to the Akron CARES charitable program to assist Akron utility customers facing financial hardship, recognizing that an effective assistance-based strategy will reduce shutoffs and prevent the city from defaulting on its financial obligations, supporting new outreach efforts to educate and assist customers eligible for assistance through various communications channels, and declaring an emergency. And I will defer to the sponsors. I know a lot of this we've talked about already, but I will defer to the sponsors on this. I don't know if Mr. Fusco or Ms. Somerville, who would like to speak.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I will start. This resolution really focuses more so on finding permanent solutions. As this whole body knows, before COVID, residents have struggled to pay water bills. And I just want to thank the mayor and the administration for all that they have done during the pandemic to be lenient and to help residents during this difficult time. But we know even after COVID, the struggle will still exist. And so this is what this resolution is really asking, for us to continue to find ways in which we can remove barriers, continuing to be creative in terms of how we can make sure these funds are more accessible, but also making sure that we are intentional about always continually raising funds so that when residents do need help, funds are available. And that's really what this is all about. So thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Fusco, did you want to add anything? Okay, very good. Questions or comments from committee members? And then we'll go to council members that are outside the committee. Looking around. Wave your hand if you have a comment. Okay. Oh, Ms. Connor, thank you.
I just want to say, with regard to the outreach, if you'd like to, I would be more than happy to help you with any people you're looking for in Ward 10. Lord knows if we can find them to vote, we can find them to help them. So let's go out and look for them.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right.
Councilman Malik also has his hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Malik.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to, second the point that Councilwoman Connor made. I'm sure as we go forward that there will be, we can all work on trying to think of even more creative ways of getting information about the Akron Cares program out to the community. I think it's an admirable thing. And I'm sure that, I'm sure that this 240,000, 250,000 will help people. With that being said, I know that some of the language in the resolution is about the fact that moratoriums aren't effective at preventing water issues and disconnections. I think, again, I respectfully, I think we're not we don't want to create a long-term problem. We want to make sure we solve the long-term problem, but we're not addressing the short-term problem, which is the fact that we are continuing to disconnect people's accounts during COVID, when people are not able to pay their bills, when we don't want people to, we want people to be able to wash their hands. So, I would respectfully say that, I can't support it based on that language about moratorium. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions? All right. Do I have a motion on this piece from the committee?
So moved.
Okay, the motion is for?
Suspension of rules.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of suspension of the rules, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I didn't hear any opposition, so we will pass that out this evening. And I believe that is our last piece in Public Utilities. So with that,
Chair?
we will, oh,
Chair?
Mr. Neal.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to speak on the piece, but I do want us to, since we had some healthy discussion about, water rates, water bills and whatnot, and to Council President's point, wanted to be able to come up with solutions. We've been to this point before. I would suggest that we pull every piece of legislation that has tried to address this issue, because, okay, we're putting money into the CARES, but how are we monitoring it? How do we know if it's, what wards are receiving it? If the same people are receiving it, they get it all the time. What type of metrics are we using, and what type of support to make sure that we leverage these dollars in the right way? I think it makes us feel good on one hand, like we're doing something, but the reality of it is we end up here every year without any deeper understanding of knowing which wards are the greatest impact. If these are homeowners, are they renters? So out of sight, out of mind, because we go to these and we have these discussions. We're at the beginning of the year where we can set meeting times to really focus on this. Like I said, since we've passed and set the sewer rate, I mean, we've had legislation that has come in, but as a council, we've never caucused to really see how we can be creative in addressing this issue. And again, the rate we set is an arbitrary rate because we had to set one. We know that it creates a hardship for half of our residents. It is our responsibility to try to find another way to address this, either by doing this in a equitable fashion, like based on percentage of income. To the mayor's credit, most of us were ignorant of the fact that we were given the zoo free water for all those years. We never answered the question about, we write off, and Ms. Goodrich, you could tell me if this numbers are still correct. We write off, in the past, we were writing off somewhere between $1.2 to $1.5 million every year of delinquent water bills. But the city was getting back about $750,000 to $800,000 every year. As council, can we follow that flow of the dollars throughout the system to know how we leverage that best to minister to our community? Again, just know, I'll say this again, this is 2021. Mr. Freeman, I think you're in my group. We thought we'd be in flying cars by now, and we're almost there. I say that to say we cannot be using antiquated ways and guessing at this anymore, because we don't have to guess. We may not like what the figures tell us, but we've got the technology, we've got the intellectual capital to help us do better by our constituents. And my plea is that we do just that. Not that now that we pass this, we wait until we get to this time next year and we're doing the same thing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And by the way, I don't know why you don't have your flying car. I have mine. So, all right. Any other comments? If not, we will adjourn at 4:16. Thank you so much.
This is the final committee meeting of the day. Thanks, everyone.